Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I just wanted to talk about a few books that I've gotten in the past couple of months, as well as some books that I'm going to be unhauling, because the last time I did a haul was in January, I think, in early January, and my unhaul was a little bit before that. So I have some new books to talk about, some books that I want to discuss getting rid of, etc. Just excuse the lighting situation. It is rainy and disgusting outside today, and I'm sitting by a window to attempt to get some light in here. So if the light changes, I apologize for that, but we're gonna roll with it. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the video. So we're gonna start with all the books that I'm hauling, and then we will move into the unhauls. So let's just talk about the most recent book that I've gotten in, just because I'm excited about it, and that is Like Me by Haley Feylon. So this is a book that I found out about through Uncarly on YouTube. She talked about it a few times on her channel, and it just sounded like a pretty sad girl kind of book. So from my understanding, this book follows a young woman named Mickey who is trying to go into the modeling industry, and she's really struggling, she's not doing so great, and she starts to idolize this model who she sees on Instagram and thinks is just the epitome of everything she wants to be, and it becomes obsessive and it becomes a real problem for her. I just think it sounds like a very interesting kind of sad girl book, and it sounds kind of similar to The Shame by McKenna Goodman, even though this is not necessarily about motherhood. It's about social media obsession and the damage that can do to somebody, and how unrealistic the expectations for your life can become when you're looking at social media and seeing people succeed, or at least put up the front that they're succeeding and that they're better than everyone else, even if they're not. So this sounds super interesting and right up my alley, and I'm very excited to read it. So this is a little sneak peek into a current read of mine, which I was not planning on reading this month, so it's not in the TBR, and it is Love by Mayan. I don't know how to pronounce that name at all. This is translated. It was originally published in Hebrew in 2020, and it was translated by the author in 2022. So this is basically a very, very short novella about a sex worker. So the blurb says that love is a fever dream of a novel, which blurs the boundaries between violence and intimacy, objectification, and real love. So the writing is very lyrical, and I also don't necessarily think that the plot or any of the writing is linear. We kind of circle back to things we discussed before, and sometimes we get this narration of we instead of I, even though the book is really only narrated by one person, one woman. But we end up jumping into this sort of plural narration at some points, and that kind of, to me at least, makes it seem like the author is talking about all people who are sex workers and kind of making it more all-encompassing and broad rather than speaking to the specific character. So I haven't finished this yet. I'm about halfway through, but that's what I'm gathering so far, and I'm looking forward to finishing this. Next up, let's talk about a book that I've already finished but wanted to include here because I got it recently, and that is New Animal by Ella Baxter. So just to keep it as a book haul instead of a book review, I'm not going to go super in-depth into this, but I will link my Instagram in the description where I have actually posted a full review of this book, so if you're interested in that, check it out. This book follows a woman named Amelia, and she is a cosmetic mortician at her family's mortuary business, and her mother dies suddenly in an accident, and she is thrown into complete chaos and turmoil and has to reevaluate her life, how she handles stress, how she handles her emotions, how she compartmentalizes everything until it doesn't exist, so she never feels anything. And a big part of this book too is about using sex as escape, so it sort of combines grief and escapism. So this obviously has a lot of very similar themes to a lot of other sad girl books, and sort of reminds me of Hysteria by Jessica Gross in some ways, though just as a spoiler to my review, I don't think that this one did those things as well as Hysteria did, because personally Hysteria is a favorite of mine, and I know I've talked about it many a time, but it is just so well done, and this one I felt was a tiny bit lacking, but I will direct you to that review so you can see the full thoughts on that. But that is New Animal. Moving right along, we have another book that I have already read, but I just wanted to purchase a physical copy of it, and it is Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jaswal. This is a book that I read for a book club, and really enjoyed it. I listened to it on audio because I wasn't sure if I would love it, and I've been trying to listen to books for a book club on audio so that I can get through them quicker. But oh my goodness, this book was amazing and funny and hilarious and perfect, and I gave it 5 stars and I needed to own a copy. So now I have my own copy. So this is about a young woman named Nikki who is very much unhappy with the state of her job and her life, etc. And she starts looking for opportunities in her Punjabi community in London, and she goes to the community board and she finds an ad to teach writing classes, creative writing classes. So she's like, of course, I can definitely do that. That will be amazing. And she goes and starts trying to teach these classes, and it turns out that the Punjabi woman who posted the ad could not really read it fully, so she thought that she was bringing someone in who was just going to teach the Punjabi widows how to read and write in English, and in reality, she had posted an ad for creative writing. So through a whole series of misunderstandings, Nikki doesn't end up teaching basic English or creative writing, well, kind of creative writing, but the widows end up starting to write erotic stories. So I did talk about this one in my February wrap-up video, so I will put a card above for that. But that's the basic premise, and I loved this book, and I just wanted to have my own copy, so that's that one. Speaking of London-based stories, we have Sita's Kitchen by Ragav Khanna. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce the name. So this one is about a young woman who is desperate to become a chef, and she's been told that a woman's place is in the kitchen, but she doesn't want to be in the kitchen of her husband's house. She wants to be a chef. She wants to be creative with food, make food for other people. She has more of a bigger, more broad dream for her culinary expertise, rather than sitting in a house and just making her husband and children food. So that's what the basic premise of this is about. And as for why I bought it, I did almost go to culinary school, and that was a lifelong dream of mine to be a chef. So I tried out some culinary school for a little bit and decided that going to culinary college was not for me. So I decided to become an English major and totally change the course of my career and my life. So even though I didn't decide to do that as my job and my career, I still have a soft spot for books about chefs, especially women chefs, because I feel like there's not a ton of representation of chefs who are women in a lot of books and movies, etc. That's why I love the movie Ratatouille and why I sort of seek out books like Sita's Kitchen, because I love reading about women who are passionate about cooking and want to be chefs. So even though that's not a huge part of my life anymore, I still use those skills on a regular basis, and I love reading books about it, so that is Sita's Kitchen. Very excited to read this one. So next up we have 2 short story collections that I don't know a lot about, so don't expect big descriptions of them. But the first one is You Will Never Be Forgotten by Mary South. So the general theme of this collection is the exploration of how technology can both collapse our relationships from within and provide opportunities for genuine connection. That's the overall theme. It sounded pretty interesting. I love this cover, and I'm looking forward to reading it. And the next one is Verge by Lydia Yuknavich. Not sure how to pronounce that. I don't know much about this one either. I've heard good reviews about it, and it just sounded kind of interesting. I found it at a local bookstore, and I liked the cover a lot, and I just decided to give it a go. So, like I said, it's really hard for me to describe short story collections to you if I haven't read them, because they're so all over the place sometimes, and the backs really don't give you an idea of the central themes always. So that's my very long way of saying I'm sorry that I don't have more to say about these, but these are very exciting. I will get to them hopefully very soon, and yeah. Next up, we have a book that has taken Instagram by storm, and that is The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. So this is sort of a dystopian book, which, from what I'm understanding, takes the idea of mommy shaming and really small infractions, if you will, that mothers do, like looking at their phones or not being super present one day or letting a child get injured on the playground or things like that that are moments of poor judgment but are being completely blown out of proportion by taking these women away to like a correction facility. And it just kind of looks at that, apparently. And it sounds just super, super interesting. I think it's interesting because we can definitely see and relate to parents making poor decisions or having poor judgment on their parenting skills. but we can also understand that parents and mothers don't necessarily deserve this dystopian level treatment because of it. And I just think there's going to be a lot of really interesting things to discuss when I read this book. So very excited for this one, and I'm looking forward to being able to talk to a lot of my online friends about this, because a lot of people have already read it and I'm kind of behind. So hopefully I can read this one soon. So next up, we have a book that I bought to add to a collection of mine, and that is the Shakespeare Collection. So I collect the Pelican Shakespeare editions of all of his plays and works. So recently I got the Sonnets, which is just gorgeous. I love this cover. This was one of the ones that I wanted the most, and I just happened to stumble across it in Barnes & Noble, which was so interesting because I feel like Barnes & Noble and stores like that really only have a handful of these editions usually. They usually have the more popular ones like Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet and Macbeth and ones like that, but I haven't seen any of the more obscure ones. Not that the sonnets are obscure, but just in the scheme of things, I had never seen this one anywhere, so of course I picked it up. So obviously I don't have a ton to say about the sonnets, but I did get this one for my collection, and I will read it eventually. Maybe not all at once, maybe one at a time, but very excited about it. So next up, I have a book that I picked up at a local bookstore and had never heard of it before, but decided to buy it on the spot, and that is Life Sciences by Joy Soreman. So let me just read you the back. It says, for centuries, the women in Ninan Moisey's family have been afflicted by obscure, inexplicable medical phenomena. 17-year-old Ninan, I don't know how to pronounce that name, is no exception to this bizarre family inheritance. And she wakes one morning with a debilitating and excruciatingly painful response to touch on her arms. Unlike her forebears, she refuses to passively accept her cursed fate and rebels against the indifferent medical professionals who dismiss her condition as uninteresting, feminine, obscure, niche, or incurable. A taut, daring parable of womanhood, Life Sciences is a bold reclamation of self and bodily autonomy. When I read the back of this book, I was utterly stunned. I was like, this is incredible and sounds right up my alley, so I'm definitely going to be reading that soon. I think it's going to be an intense read. I think it might be a painful read, but a necessary one, and I am so excited about it. And finally, we have a very teeny tiny book, and it is Parade by Hiromi Kawakami. So honestly, I don't know a ton about this book. I do know that it was translated from the Japanese, and I know that it's cute, and I know that it's illustrated. So it has these little, let me find a good one. It has these little like tiny cute illustrations throughout the book, and I'm obsessed with them. This one's just a page of little, I don't even know if you can see, little lines. It's not words, it's little like markings. It just has such an interesting look to it, and the concept is just fascinating to me. So I am very, 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 very excited to read this. It probably won't take me longer than like an hour to read, and I'm totally here for that. So you'll definitely catch me reading that one soon. All right, let's quickly just run through the unhauls, because to be honest, I don't have a ton to say about these, which is probably why I'm unhauling them. So most of these are books that I read, but a couple of them I DNF'd or decided I didn't want to pick up ever. And let's just get into it. So the one that I know I just don't want to pick up anymore is Exciting Times by Anisha Dolan. I bought this thinking that I would make a video about Carly Thorne's favorite books or something like that, and I just am not feeling it anymore. I know that this has been compared to Sally Rooney's works a lot. I read Normal People. I haven't read Conversations with Friends. I liked Normal People. I didn't love it. I'm not sure how I'll feel about Conversations with Friends, because some people say they like it more, some people say they like it less than Normal People. The concept of this just doesn't sound super intriguing to me. It's about a woman who arrives in Hong Kong from Dublin, and she's sort of juggling a relationship with two different people, and she's teaching, and I don't know what else. It just doesn't sound like something that's gonna intrigue me, and the comparisons to Sally Rooney don't really help because I'm not a Sally Rooney fangirl. I don't love her, so this one just doesn't sound like I'll ever get to it. It's been on my shelf for over a year probably, and I just have no interest anymore in reading this. So I'm gonna pass it along to someone who will be happier to find it in a used bookstore, and yeah. So let's talk about the one book that I DNF'd, and it is Karate Chop by Dorothy Norris. So I started reading this a couple months ago, and I just could not get through it. I got through maybe 2 stories. It's a short story collection. I just didn't connect to it at all. I found it boring. I found it dragging on, even though each story is like 2 pages. And maybe that was a problem for me too, because the idea of very short and condensed short stories sounds wonderful, but this one just wasn't it. And maybe longer short stories are the way they are because you need the time to develop characters and develop a story, or at least develop the tiny little bit that we get to see enough that it has any kind of impact, if that makes any sense. If you're someone who reads short stories, you'll probably understand what I'm talking about, but I just didn't find that this brought me into the characters' lives enough. It wasn't a little slice of life in the way that I usually look for with short stories. It just didn't feel like it had a point to it at all, and I didn't like it. So I'm just gonna DNF it and pass it along to someone that will hopefully enjoy it more. All right, let's move into the books that I actually did read. The first one I just talked about last month, and that is Flowers of Mold by Ha-seong-nam. I'm very disappointed that I didn't love this one because I thought I was gonna like it a lot. The description sounded like something that I would enjoy. It's short stories, it's Korean translated, it's creepy and a little bit unsettling. I thought it was gonna be everything that I wanted, and it just wasn't. I have a hard time articulating why, but I did talk about this in a recent video as well. It just wasn't it for me, and I don't really want to keep it around because I'm never gonna read it again, so I'm just gonna pass it along. So 2 more books that I've also discussed recently and read recently, and I know immediately I want to get rid of, are A Mouthful of Air by Amy Koppelman and The Authenticity Project by Claire Pooley. I read this one for the aforementioned book club that I'm a part of and did not like it at all. Didn't connect with it, thought it was kind of unrealistic and a little bit too fluffy for my tastes, and I know I'm not gonna reread it, so I don't want it anymore. And as for this one, I read this one as a buddy read with my mom and just found it to be not it. It's about a mom who's struggling with some severe mental illness, and the end made me cry, but not in a connecting to the book way, in a this is traumatizing and I don't know why it's happening kind of way. And even though this book got an emotional response out of me, I didn't feel like it was a good thing. Like, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel like it was worth keeping it around. So maybe someone else will enjoy this one more, and I'm going to pass it along. All right, and the final 2 books I want to talk about are 2 hardcovers, which always hurts my heart a little bit, but they are The Woman in the Purple Skirt by Natsuko Imemura and Nobody Somebody Anybody by Kelly McClory. So as for this one, I read this one kind of a while ago, and I just didn't feel like I connected with it super a ton. I did write about it for a couple of different projects, and I just feel like that's all that I needed to get out of it. I don't remember a ton about it. It didn't stick with me, and I'm not interested in rereading it, which is unfortunate because it's a beautiful cover, and I thought that I was gonna love this one, but I just didn't, and it didn't stick with me for any length of time, and I think someone else will be very excited to see a hardcover in such beautiful condition in a used bookstore. So hopefully someone else will enjoy this one, and I'm going to unhaul it. And then finally we have Nobody Somebody Anybody, which is very, very sad because this was a book that I had on my shelves and I was hyping up to myself for a long time, thought I was gonna love it. It's a very sad girl kind of book, and it just wasn't it for me. I listened to it on audio and it just didn't do anything for me. I think there are so many better sad girl books out there. I didn't connect to the character very much. I thought her story was a little bit predictable. It was very, very easy to spot where she was going wrong and see how much things could be improved if she just did one little thing or communicated one little thing. She was unlikable, but not enough to sort of fit into that very unlikable female main character trope. It just didn't hit any notes particularly hard, and I felt like it was a very meh book. This one is kind of a 3-star for me, and I kind of want to make a rule for myself where any book that's 3 stars or under just gets booted because I'm never gonna reread it and I'm not interested in keeping it around. So this one's gonna get booted, and as unfortunate as it is because it has a beautiful cover and I thought I would love it, it just needs to go. So that concludes this little haul and unhaul video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.